Well, hey everybody, happy Easter. We are so thrilled that you're checking out this last installment of our series, This is Real Love. And last week and this week, we've been kind of unpacking this idea about all of the things that Jesus said and Jesus did to show real love to other people. And for some of you, you may say, okay, I understand like Easter's a really big deal in the church, but maybe you don't understand why it's a really big deal. Well, for us as a church, we believe that Easter is a really big deal because of the resurrection. And the resurrection simply means this, that Jesus died and came back to life. And that's a really amazing and impressive thing because not only did Jesus say he was going to die and come back to life, but he actually did it. And there's really a whole lot to this story other than just the amazing revelation that it actually happened. But maybe for some of you, as you hear, this story, maybe year after year, maybe this is the first time you've heard it, but you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, I don't really see how Jesus coming back to life thousands of years ago really has anything to do with my life today. And if that's you, I completely understand because I lived my life that way for many years and I felt that way before. Because even though I say, yes, I believe in God and I know how much God loves me, I also understand the fact that I'm not perfect. That there are things that I've done in my life that are wrong, that are bad, that are sinful. And because of that, it can be hard to feel like I'm really loved, accepted, and especially forgiven by God. In other words, you could say it this way, that it can be really hard for me to believe that real love from God is really for me. I mean, I can think about countless things that I've done in my life where, I kind of sit there and I feel like God could never forgive me. Like, for example, I can remember back to when I was in middle school and high school, and there was one student that many of my classmates and I would cheat off of. Why? Because he was brilliant and he was smarter than most of our teachers, honestly. And so we would use his homework and we would copy it and we would just do that without thinking there was anything wrong with it. Now, we know now, obviously, there was. Or what about times that maybe you bend the truth a little bit or you tell some lies. And sometimes they're small lies that are really insignificant, but other times there's some pretty significant things, like maybe when you tell a lie to your parents. Or what about times that I think about when I spread rumors about people, that maybe I had an issue with somebody, and so what did I do is I went and I talked to somebody else behind their back about it, and I did all these things. And here's the thing, is it wasn't so much about what I was doing, but it was about how I felt after the fact. That I really look back on those actions and I would think to myself, there's no possible way that God could love me. There's no possible way that God could forgive me. And maybe you can relate to that as well. Maybe not those specific instances, but something along those lines. Whether it's big or small, mistakes have a way of making us feel like after what we've done, that nobody could possibly ever love us or accept us. And there's definitely nobody that could forgive us, right? I mean, especially not God. Well, that's where the story of Easter really kicks into high gear. Because all the stuff about Jesus dying on a cross for our sins and offering us forgiveness by doing that, that's why it matters. Is because his resurrection makes a way for us to be close to him forever. And believing that for ourselves, it has the power to change everything, including how we handle our mistakes and our mess ups along the way. So to help us out, we're going to look at an encounter that Jesus had with a guy named Peter. And we know that Peter was one of Jesus's closest friends, closest followers. And this encounter that we're going to read today was recorded in the New Testament, which, as we've said before, is the part of the Bible that was written after Jesus came to earth. It details his life, his ministry, his death, his resurrection, and what happened after all of that. And so as we go through this, we want to talk about Peter. Now, Peter started out his life as a fisherman, and he left his career, his life, his family, he left it all to follow Jesus. He said, this is what I'm going to do. And eventually he becomes a leader in the early church. And he starts to share the message and the hope with other people. And as he does this, you'd probably hear the story and you'd say, well, Peter had his life together. He was probably a pretty well put together guy because, who would be entrusted with that responsibility? Maybe you say, well, he probably had no mistakes or no mess ups or nothing that would make him from feeling loved or accepted or forgiven by God. But here's the reality of the world that we live in, is that Peter was known for making some pretty big mistakes. And if you spent time around the church or heard any stories about Peter before, you're well aware of this. Because he had a way of kind of acting first and then thinking about it later, which turned into a recipe for a lot of major mess-ups. And one of his biggest mess-ups actually happened right around Easter. Because as Jesus was nearing the end of his life, Jesus knew what was coming. He knew what was on tap, and he knew that he would be captured and beaten and eventually crucified on a cross. He knew what this meant for him, but he also understood that it would mean a lot of potential pain and danger for his disciples, including Peter. You see, his disciples were closer to him than anybody else that he knew. And so all of this was going on, and Jesus knew that when the day was coming, when he would be arrested and he would be crucified, that his closest followers had the potential to be in danger as well. And because of that, Jesus warns them about the events that are about to take place. And as he warns them, Peter kind of steps in and he says, no, Jesus, you can tell me all these bad things that are going to happen, but I am right there with you all the way to your death. But when Jesus was arrested, what did Peter actually do? He actually denied even knowing Jesus. Not once, not twice, but on 3 separate occasions. He denies even knowing him. Now you talk about a royal mess up. I can't possibly imagine how you come back from that. But after Jesus' death, Peter and the other disciples, they weren't really sure what to do because this guy they had followed for 3 years was suddenly gone. And so what do? Their friend, their teacher, he had been killed and they were left alone. And in Peter's case, he was left feeling really guilty. But then this amazing thing of Easter happens, where Jesus is dead in the tomb and he rises from the dead. He comes back to life. And one of the first things Jesus did was seek out his friends that included Peter. Now it turns out that as Jesus is looking for Peter, Peter's out on the Sea of Galilee, which is a place he knew really well, and it's also a place that Jesus had visited several times. And so Peter decides, hey, I need to kind of get my mind off the guilt that I'm feeling, so he goes fishing with the other disciples. And that night, they've been out all night. These are trained fishermen, and they hadn't caught a thing. And so because of that, they're kind of getting discouraged, and all of this is happening, and they look up on the shore, and in the distance, they see this person who's calling to them. And suddenly they start to listen to what he's saying. And to the disciples' surprise, the person calling to them was actually Jesus. And Peter literally jumps off the boat, swims in the water to the shore just to get close to Jesus again. Now remember, this is the same guy who the last exchange that he had with Jesus was denying that he even knew who he was. And because of that, you may think when Peter finally got to the shore that Jesus would have greeted him with a less than warm welcome. But here's what actually takes place. It says, after breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied. You know I love you. Then feed my lambs, Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus had asked him a question a third time. And he said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, then feed my sheep. You see, Jesus gave Peter a chance to right his wrongs. How many times did Peter deny knowing Jesus? 3. And how many times did Jesus ask the question to Peter? 3. which I think is pretty incredible. And there's a whole lot more that we could unpack with this. But I think that what it boils down to is that Jesus really understood the guilt that Peter had to be feeling and carrying with him. He knew that Peter probably felt like his failures were going to keep him from God's love and God's forgiveness. But here, Jesus extends not one, not two, but three separate chances for Peter to be made right, to be forgiven. And not just that, Jesus wanted Peter to continue to have a place in God's story. You see, so often I think we feel like our own mistakes or our own failures, they keep us from God's love. But they, and we may say, well, they're going to keep us from big and important things. But Jesus literally asked Peter to take care of his sheep, to feed them. And he wasn't talking about real sheep here. He was talking about his followers. The other people who were currently following Jesus and who one day would also follow Jesus. That's a big job. And it's one that Jesus offers to Peter because he loved Peter. He believed in him. He believed that his failures were not the end of the story. And guess what? The same is true for you and I today. Because the story of Easter reminds us that Jesus offers everyone forgiveness. Jesus offers everyone forgiveness. In other words, the wrong things that you do, they don't disqualify you from God's love. They don't keep you from being close to God or even being used by God to accomplish some really big and great things. Because of Jesus' death and resurrection that we celebrate at Easter, you are forgiven. You are free to be loved by God, and that is something that needs to be celebrated. And what I particularly love about this story is that it demonstrates God's love for us when we make mistakes. You see, Jesus didn't move away from Peter when he failed. Instead, Jesus actually came towards him. And the same is true for you and I today. That God moves towards us in the middle of our failures, offering us forgiveness and a chance to start again. You see, so today, both today and during this Easter season, I want you to ask yourself what you think is keeping you from God's love and forgiveness. What is it that you think is keeping you from God's love and forgiveness? Is it one bad choice? Maybe it's a series of mistakes. Maybe it's a secret that nobody knows about. But whatever it is, I want you to know that because of Jesus, that thing in your life doesn't have the power to separate you from God's love and forgiveness. So first, ask yourself, what is it that's keeping me from God's love and forgiveness? And then I would encourage you to make a choice to take one step toward God. Maybe it's talking with a trusted adult about, hey, how do I even start having a relationship with Jesus? Maybe for others of you, you say, I need to start praying more. I need to read my Bible more to learn more about God. Or maybe you say, I need to listen to worship music and I need to really not just listen to it, but I need to kind of think about what the lyrics are saying and what they really mean. Or maybe I need to ask God for forgiveness and I need to just start over. Maybe that means showing up to church, or maybe showing up to your small group and kind of working together with a group of peers to figure out what it is that this faith thing is all about. And whatever it looks like for you, I want to encourage you to try to take a step toward God this week, knowing that there's nothing that can separate you from God's real love. You see, I want to encourage you to continue this conversation at home with your friends. Talk about all the things that we remember at Easter and why it means something to you. You see, when we gather in person, we have small groups, and we talk about this every week when we're together in person. We have small groups because it's a place for you to talk honestly about what it is that you're learning here. It's a place for you to actually speak up with your questions, to celebrate big steps in faith, and to encourage each other. To keep going and believing in God's best for your lives. So maybe for you, you need to get connected to a small group of people or a trusted adult, and you need to begin to start sharing so that you can take a step forward in your life right now. We'd love to have you join us in person next Sunday so you can do this face-to-face with other people. So as we wrap up our time together today, I want you to remember that Jesus offers everyone forgiveness. Jesus offers everyone forgiveness. And as you think about that principle, I want you to think about this question, is how does it feel to know that Jesus offers forgiveness to everyone, including you? Well, I want to thank you so much for checking out this last installment of our series, This is Real Love. We hope that it's been helpful to you. Our goal throughout this series has been to kind of unpack what it is that Jesus says to us. He tells us that it's all about love, and it's all about his love and his forgiveness that was extended to us on the cross over 2,000 years ago. And while it was significant and important then, it's still as significant and important for you today. And so maybe as you've heard these messages, you say, well, yeah, I don't know that I really believe in that. We'd love to talk with you further. We'd love to help you kind of explore that and answer some questions that you may have. We'd love to help you work together to help you kind of explore that topic in its entirety. Maybe for others of you, as you've heard these words today, you say, yeah, I know that I need to take a step to do more for God. I need to, spend more time with him, and I need to serve other people, and I need to demonstrate his love to other people. We would encourage you to do that. And maybe you say, I don't want to do that alone. I want a group of people. Come to us, and we'd love to help you with that. Or maybe for others of you, you say, hey, I need to hit the reset button because I've made a big mistake, or I've made several mistakes, and I need to just kind of do a course correction. We'd love to help you with that as well. So wherever you are on this journey, know that there are people here who care about you, who love you, who desire to support you. And we'd love to have you join us in person. As I mentioned earlier, we meet on Sunday nights from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room at New Hope Church. We have our small groups that connect people, and you can talk about the questions that you have. You can wrestle with things. You can be encouraged. And we'd love to have you join us. Have a great and wonderful rest of your week, and an amazing Easter as you celebrate the resurrection.